Hello, I'm Teresa Roberts Holloway. I'm the instructor for the radiobiology course. The dose assignment is there for us to look at how radiographic technical exposure factors can reduce the exposure rate to the patients while maintaining quality imaging. To reduce patient exposure dose with technical factors, a radiographer can significantly reduce the entrance skin exposure to the patient by selecting technical exposure factors that would enhance the radiographic quality. Meanwhile, it can reduce the exposure to the patient. Some of the variables that influences the selection and the interrelationship of the prime factors include kilovoltage, milliamperage, time, distance, source image distance, source object distance, object image distance, focal spot size, filtration, grid ratios, intensifying screens, and film sensitivity, to name a few. The assignment includes a radiographic study that was performed using a variety of these technical factors. So, in order to perform the dose assignment, you have to understand what it takes and what's included in the exposure technical factors. On the assignment, a satisfactory radiograph was obtained using 300 mA, 20 milliseconds at 90 kilovoltage. We also had 182 centimeters of SID, or source image distance, with 20 centimeters of OID, object image distance. There was a 1 millimeter focal spot size, 8:1 grid, 200 image receptor speed screen sensitivity, and no pathological conditions. Again, just to name a few of the factors that go into a quality radiograph and at the same time maintaining the patient dose. There were 8 questions on the assignment. Again, most of them were related to the relationship between these variables and how to reduce the exposure to the patient and skin entrance exposure and or to maintain the image quality. So let's take a look at the first example. The first example, the radiographer receives an exposure, and let me pick up the assignment paper here so I'm reading it correctly, and I hope you guys will follow along with your assignment template. The radiographer receives an exposure of 100 milliroentgens per week at the distance listed in the situation. And again, the situation is the satisfactory radiographic image listed above. So at a distance listed in the situation, the distance was 182 centimeters, source image distance. And it says, what would the radiographer receive if the distance was changed to 91 centimeters without compensating the technical factors? And I also asked if you guys would show your work. So when I look at a problem like that, again, we have set technical factors that we're using for the first picture. And it's asking us if we took a second picture and if the radiographer moved a certain distance, now what would they receive in terms of an exposure dose? So what you have to know is what is the relationship between changing distances and the exposure to the radiographer. And there is a formula that's representative of that. I forgot to also say most of your resources that you're going to have for this assignment will be in our Carlton Adler textbook. I believe there's a chapter called Prime Factors, and also you can find a lot of information in Stuart Bouchon's book, and also again it would be under technical factors and reducing patient exposures. Okay, so again, with the first problem, you're going to have to look for what is the relationship between changing distances and exposure rates to the technologists. The second question or item asked in this particular case, again, once they say in this particular case, they're again referring back to the satisfactory radiographic image that was described at the beginning of the assignment, along with all of its factors. And so they said, in this particular case, what would be the unit of measurement the radiographer would receive? What, again, would be the patient unit of measurement? And what would be the in-air unit of measurement for exposure? So they're asking you for unit of measurements. And you can refer to the radiation protection book. I believe in the first chapter it covers unit of measurement. In fact, I think that's the name of the title of the chapter. So if you look there, you will find that they're listing a lot of unit of measurements. An example of a unit of measurement would be, again, we've talked about the source image distance, the centimeters. Centimeter is a unit of measurement for distance, just as well as inches are unit of measurements for distance. This item, number 2, is asking you to list what those unit of measurements are for those 3 things. That's all they want to know. Do you know what is the unit of measurement for the radiographer exposure rate that they receive? What is the unit of measurement that the patient receives? And what is the unit of measurement of exposure in air? On to question number 3. Name 2 imaging procedures where a closer distance would be beneficial to image quality and outweigh the risk. I believe in your radiation protection booklet, chapter 2, and I believe chapter 1 and chapter 2, they talk about different procedures, imaging procedures that may have high dose to the patient, may have a dose high because of the distance between the patient and the x-ray source is kind of close. But we have to still do the procedure because it's going to benefit the patient. So just asking you to look for different procedures that this applies to. Question number 4, and then we're going to take a break. I'll make a second part to this video. Question number 4, in order to maintain the density of the image and reduce the patient dose, what would be the new exposure factor at 91 centimeters? So in the first question, they talked about the distance that the radiographer was at in the original exposure, and it was 182 centimeters SID. They moved it in number 1 to 91 centimeters SID and wanted to know what would that tech exposure be. And question number 4 is asking you, in order to maintain the density on the radiograph, what would you do if the distance moved also? Okay, so you need to understand what that relationship is. Number 1, the relationship from the exposure rate to the technologist. Number 2, actually question number 4, the exposure rate to the image quality. So what would you have to do to maintain that? Okay, this is questions number 1 and 4, and hopefully I've given you some things to think about when you're trying to review over these questions and be able to answer the questions. I will show your calculations. Also, take advantage of the preview assignment, because I will look over each assignment and I will give you feedback and comments. So again, the preview assignment will be due June 11th. So please take a look at these. Use your other textbooks for references, okay, for a resource. I believe also the assignments have links that are also helpful.